Good morning, it's Adil Zainulbhai, Chairman, Capacity Building Commission. It is my great honor and privilege to interview today Dr. Ramesh Chand. Dr. Chand has been in agriculture for 40 plus years. He's been member agriculture at NITI Aayog since its very founding for 9 years. And as he tells me, he's also a practicing farmer. So we couldn't get anyone who understands Indian agriculture better than Dr. Chand. And today we are going to ask Dr. Chand to give us a brief primer on Indian agriculture. Where did we come from? Where are we today? What are the challenges facing Indian agriculture? And then in a subsequent session, what are the priorities going forward and what are the opportunities going forward? So it's quite a lot of material to cover, but we are getting it covered by the best person who understands Indian agriculture. So with that, Dr. Chand, welcome to the series, and let me start out by asking you a very basic question about Indian agriculture. Could you give us a brief overview of the Indian agricultural landscape post-independence in the context of its main features and its socio-economic impact?
Okay. So first of all, good morning to all. We inherited agriculture at the time of independence, which was in a very poor state in all respects. The level of technology was awfully poor. The farm size had a lot of fragmentation. Use of modern input was almost missing, and more than 1/3 of the arable land was not under plough. And in terms of development institution, the structure was quite rudimentary. So for the first 15 to 20 years, the only source of growth with India was to expand area under cultivation. That was helpful for some time, but by the year 1965, as we exhausted potential of area to raise our production, we faced severe shortage of food, we faced widespread hunger, and our dependence on import increased heavily during mid 1960s. But what was more worrying was that these imports and food aid was not easily available. There were some serious strings attached to food import and food aid. So it was a very desperate situation, but fortunately green revolution technology was there on the horizon. It was visible in Mexico in case of wheat. So out of this desperation, India embraced the green revolution technology during, I would say that the first sizable lot of high yielding varieties of seed came to India in 1966. We used to call them miracle seed. This was followed by similar kind of miracle seed from International Rice Research Institute in Philippines, Manila. Beet seed came from CIMMYT, where Dr. Borlaug, Nobel laureate, was heading that institute. So since the adoption of green revolution technology, which began in year 1966, I would say that this strategy and technology transformed all facets of agriculture, and that is continuing to shape the destiny of agriculture even today. If you look at what was the power of this technology to transform agriculture, between 1965 and say 2020 or 2021, our population increased from 50 crore to 140 crore. If you look at our food production, it increased from 150 million ton to recently 950 million ton. So this is, I would say, the overall in nutshell that how we moved from 1947 to 2020 2022. This take us to look at landscape of agriculture, what is the source endowment, what is the base on which we are operating. I think to understand Indian agriculture, it is important to have a brief look at what is the landscape of Indian agriculture. We have 14.6 crore land holding or farm in our country. Average size of land holding is 1 hectare. When I was talking about increase in food production from 150 million ton to 950 million ton, I forgot to mention that this achievement did not come from industrial agriculture. What is remarkable is that this achievement occurred at the farms of peasants, small peasant, tiny land holding. So, this average size of land holding is only 1 hectare. 2/3 of our farmer operate on less than 1 hectare, 86% operate on less than 2 hectare. Then we take 2 crops only on 55% area. This is another important feature, that nearly 45% of area in the country is productively used only for 4-5 months. So, that is another feature. Now we have 55% area under irrigation. At the time of independence, it was only 17%. Then we also have livestock population, 54 crore. It is important to mention this number because in India, farmers have followed mixed crop livestock system. So, it is this mixed crop livestock system which has sustained I would say fertility and productivity of our agriculture for centuries, even when we were not using synthetic fertilizer. That farmyard manure was used in large quantity as a nutrition for our crop. Then we know that we have 124 centimeter of rainfall, nearly 70% of it is in southwest monsoon. So, this also has its own implication, that if 70% of rain fall in just 3 months, we need to store it for subsequent use. Another important feature of Indian agriculture is that more than 80% of it is food production. Crops like cotton or non-food crops, their share is shrinking and their share has further come down. So, what is the current status of agriculture in Indian economy? We have been told that agriculture is backbone of Indian economy, but it is important to look at definite numbers. The share of agriculture for India matters in terms of growth of output, it matters in terms of food and nutrition security, it matters in terms of sustainability, and it also matters in terms of livelihood. So, those things are visible in these numbers, that if we consider agriculture, which technically is defined as all crops and livestock, it accounts for 1/6 of national income in the country. If we include allied sector, which are fishery and forestry, then share of agriculture in national income goes up to 18.4% in year 2002 to 2023. Then I mentioned about livelihood. 45% of our workforce depend upon agriculture as their principal occupation, not as a subsidiary occupation, as a principal occupation. So, you can imagine that only little lower than half of the total workforce depend upon agriculture to drive their livelihood. Agriculture is also very important source of net foreign exchange earning. Our exports in last couple of years have remained 50% more than what are our import, and last year figure is that export were 50 billion US dollar, import were 32 billion US dollar, and there was a net foreign exchange surplus of 17.8 billion US dollar. Then I said agriculture also matter for sustainability. Why? Because 80 to 90% water, depending upon which year we are taking, is consumed in agriculture. So this is a very high amount, and India is among I would say the country which top in terms of share of agriculture in use of water. Then also 40% of our land is under agriculture. If we consider arable land, then half of country's land mass is under agriculture. Another thing which is lesser known is that share of agriculture in greenhouse gas emission is almost same as its share in the national income. So these three dimensions, that how much water is consumed in agriculture, how much land is under agriculture, that matter for biodiversity and ecology, and how much greenhouse gas is emitted by agriculture. This make agriculture very important for sustainability and for issue of climate change. So now we have completed 75 years of our independence. Generally, when we look at development indicator, we start from year 1950-51. That was the year when India started its first 5-year plan, and that is the year from which we have data available for most of the socio-economic indicators. So during nearly last 7 decades, our population has been growing at 1.9%. Our food production has been growing at 3.1%. This growth rate implies that the growth rate in our food production was more than 2 times the growth rate in human population. So because of that, per capita availability of food improved significantly. It almost doubled during this period, which I will show subsequently in terms of exact numbers. The growth in agriculture income is 7 times during these 70 years, but as we all know that during the process of proper growth and development, non-agricultural sector always grow faster than agriculture sector. That has happened even in case of India, that our total economy has grown 4 times the growth rate in case of agriculture. So this table which I am sharing, this give in terms of number that during 70 years between 1951 and 2021, what is the average trend growth rate and what is the increase in population, food, agriculture, income and worker in economy and in agriculture. Then I also prepared another, many people call it innovative and beautiful graph, which present trend growth rate during 10 years period beginning from 1951 to 1960 and then adding year 1 year every year. So this has some advantage. This has advantage that the calculation is not affected by abnormality of base year or abnormality of terminal years, and all possible decade get opportunity to present their growth rate in this graph. So this shows that during last 70 decade we have 7 phases in agriculture. If you look at the first 10 years after 51 to 60, the growth rate slowed down, as I mentioned in the beginning, that the adoption of technology was not there, use of modern input was not there at all. So, we adopted Green Revolution technology during 1966, which is impact of which is very clearly visible, that the growth rate which was falling, it just got reversed. From deceleration, we moved to acceleration. Then initially the green revolution was adopted only in those areas which have assured irrigation, which has very good land endowments. So, adoption of green revolution technology during the decade of 70 was quite widespread, but after that, since it required assured irrigation, its expansion did not happen. And as a result of that, you just find that we started third phase, first phase before green revolution, then first decade of green revolution when growth rate went beyond 3%. Then we have 5-6 years when growth rate started declining, because green revolution technology was not having wider dissemination, not wider adoption. So, then measures were taken to spread irrigation to other area, to take technology to other places through strong extension system. Then from mid 1980 onward, we got a phase when agriculture growth rate again started accelerating, and when we started economic reform in 1991, that gave further boost to the growth rate and it went up to 3.6%. Then came WTO, and initial years of WTO were not favorable for growth of agriculture for two reasons. One is that we were not prepared to face global competition. The second reason was that global prices which show cyclical behavior, the beginning of WTO coincided with the phase when international prices started declining. They pulled down terms of trade for agriculture. Indian prices also declined. Because of that, the growth rate in Indian agriculture also declined. But then came year 2006. Then international prices again started rising. India also prepared itself to strongly compete in international market. Our rice export started rising, many other export started rising. So, then again another phase came which was as strong as the phase of wider dissemination of technology which began in 85. So, from 2005-6 onward, we are seeing acceleration and only acceleration in agriculture growth. So, total there are 7 phases in agriculture growth in India. They are not only for sake of mentioning that we have these phases. Each phase has a story behind it. One can have important lessons that what happened in phase 1, 2, you will find that that has some important experience, important lesson for replication in some area, even in international level, that how this long story of acceleration, deceleration in Indian agriculture happen, and what were the factors underlying these changes in phases of agriculture growth. But overall, the growth rate of agriculture has been growth trajectory has been rising. If you look at trough, they are moving up. If you look at peak, they are also moving up, and overall trend has also been rising. So, this is another presentation of those 7 phases, and briefly I have just mentioned that what happened during different phases, and during this entire last 70 years, Only during 62 to 67, Indian agriculture had a negative growth of 0.47% per year for 5 years. Other than that, we always have positive growth rate in Indian agriculture. Sometime technology was playing leading role. Sometime dissemination of that technology to wider area was playing dominant role. Sometime diversification of agriculture toward high value crop played dominant role, and sometime policy of government played a was in driving seat. In fact, all these factors always play a role. I was just mentioning that in different phases, if we identify what was the single important factor which can be called as a driver of growth, so then you just find that all those factors happened: technology, wider dissemination, diversification, and government support for agriculture through remunerative prices, affordable input prices, and other kind of institutional measures. This is another feature that if we have a growth rate of 6% average, but there are large fluctuations that sometime it is 1%, sometime it is 11%. This kind of growth rate is not considered very desirable, because it creates problem of huge surplus and huge deficiencies. That is seen from instability in growth of output during a 10 years period. After initial adoption of after the initial years of adoption of green revolution technology, instability in Indian agriculture increased, because adoption of green revolution technology was confined only to Punjab, Haryana and deltaic region of southern India. As the dissemination of technology reached wider area, larger area, instability in agriculture also started declining. In fact, if we look at 70s, there were 4 years when you will, out of 10 years, when there will be negative growth. Then it came to 3 years out of 10 when negative growth. Then 2 years, and last 10, 11 years, we did not have negative growth even in 1 year. So this is how, along with the accelerated growth in agriculture, we also achieved stability in growth rate of agriculture. As we all understand that the primary purpose of agriculture production is to ensure food and nutrition security of human populations. If we look at that aspect, during the first decade after independence, India produced food that could supply 800 gram of food per person per day. After adoption of green revolution technology, it started growing, and during the first 50 years after independence, we were able to achieve per capita food production by 50%. From 800 gram per person per day, we reached a level of 1.2 kilogram of food per person per day. It is very important to mention that next 50% increase in per capita food production happened in half of the period. The first 50% increase in 50 years, the second 50% increase happened only in 25 years, between say 99 and 2023, when we increased per capita food production per day from 1.2 kg. At present, it is close to 1.9 kg per person per day. So this is, I would say, is a big achievement, and two factors contributed to this acceleration. So you are seeing clear trend that earlier we were growing at a particular rate, but that growth rate since the beginning of century moved up. One, of course, is that acceleration in growth rate of food output, and second is deceleration in growth rate of population. So both combined, they gave us accelerated growth rate in per capita food output, and that also helped India to increase its surplus and to promote its export. This food and nutrition security, it has two dimensions. One is availability of total food, second is composition of food. We all know that healthy food is that which has a balanced composition. There are cereal, there are pulses, there are fruit and vegetable, there is milk, livestock product, and like that. If you look at the changes between 81 and 2021, you will just find that share of livestock food in the total food production in India doubled from 16% to 31%, which I would say is remarkable. Then within plant food, the share of fruit and vegetable also doubled. From 17.6%, it went up to 36.9%. So this is how diversification in total food production happened in India, which is also reflected in the changes in the consumption pattern in India. We have plant food, we have livestock food, and we have fish food. If we look at fish food, its share in total food increased from 1.5% in 1981 to 6.2% in 2021. So on food and nutrition front, India has been making two type of impressive achievement. One is that there is a significant and sizable increase in availability of food, and second is that composition of food has become healthier and healthier over time. In fact, even within the food group, like if we look at pulses, if we look at any other kind of segment of agriculture, you will further find that there is a diversification. That is presented in this slide, which again present very interesting facts. You see, the thinking on agriculture in India is dominated by focus on cereals. We always see we have produced so much of food grain. As a food grain alone is food. So you will just find that if you look at the growth rate of cereal, where we say the Green Revolution initially started, their growth rate was much smaller than what was the growth rate even in oilseed, and also what is the growth rate in fruit and vegetable. In fact, during the 4 decades, 70s to 2011, the growth rate in this fruit and vegetable, you will just find that it was many times the growth rate in production of cereals. Similarly, if you look at egg, if you look at milk, if you look at meat and fish, their growth rate were much higher than what were the growth rate in case of cereals. But reason for very high attention to cereal is that cereal are staple food. That if you look at what is the total share of cereal in the food we take, though it is declining, but still cereal remain the dominant source of food energy, which is which we all know is must for undertaking a normal activity and for well-being of human beings. So overall at commodity level, this table give important messages, and one message which again is lesser known in the public domain, that despite much higher growth rate in oilseed, India is importing vegetable oil, and despite much lower growth in cereal compared to oilseed, India is exporting cereals. The reason is that if we look at per capita intake of cereal in India, it is not increasing, rather most of the period it has been declining. Indian consumer have been consuming less and less cereal on per capita basis. But when it came to edible oils, vegetable oils, during last 20 years, per capita intake of vegetable oil has increased from 8 kg per person per month per year to 20 kg per person per year. So, because of very high increase in intake of oil seeds, we are largest importer of edible oil in the world, whereas in case of cereal, we are largest exporter of rice in the world. So, when but determines surplus is not only supply side factor, it is also demand side factor, that what happens to a demand. So, the interplay of both demand side factor and supply side factor then determine whether a country will be surplus or it will be a deficit. In this commodity wise per capita production and availability, there are two more dimensions which need attention. One is that per capita production and availability of almost all food type increased in India except two categories, one is millet, another is pulses. So, that is why that country, especially our Prime Minister, is laying so much emphasis on millets. You just see the growth rate in millets, it is negative. Per capita availability declined during 35 kg per person, now it is only 13 kg. In case of pulses, recent 10 years there is some improvement, but still even in the last 1 decade we were consuming less than what was available during 60s and what was available during 70s, that is before Green Revolution, and that is the reason that millet and cereal are called victim of Green Revolution. So, this is overall story of Indian agriculture at national level, that among major food groups only pulses and millet production and intake is lower now than in 60s. All other food we have witnessed significant increase, and increase in cereal output not leading to increase in intake, because preference of people is not there for it. It is leading to increase in export. Some people blame some health indicator on intake of carb. In fact, that is not happening in case of India. It is an impression that in India intake of carbohydrate is increasing. I have shown that per capita net availability of cereal, which are the main source of carb, has been declining. It has not been increasing, whereas non-carb food it has been increasing. Whereas I think these two factors which have adverse impact on India's health implication of food are rather three factors. One is that intake of pulses is now lower than what it was during 60s and 70s. Secondly, intake of millets is much lower than it was during 60, 70. It has been continuously declining. And third is that Indian diets have been becoming too fatty. So, these are the three adverse kind of development in case of India's food sectors.
Great. So, could you, you've given a good view of Indian agriculture overall as a country, but there is a lot of diversity among the states, and I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how different states are doing in agriculture.
Yeah. India is a large country with lot of diversity in agroclimatic conditions. In fact, according to experts, there are 14, 15 major agroclimatic regions in the country. But generally the data on agroclimatic region basis is not available, because some region contain half state, 1/4 of state, 1/3 of states. So, we generally look at it state wise. The performance of agriculture and different segment of agriculture has not been uniform across states over times. There are many reasons for that. One is that natural endowments were different. Second is that the initiative taken by the states in response to the same initiative taken by center varied from center to state to state. Some states were very prompt in taking advantage of central scheme, but some were slow and some were not taking action. So, in some states irrigation development happened very fast, in some state irrigation development happened very slow. So, if we look at performance of a state in agriculture during the last 10 years, we get lot of interesting pattern, both the positive side and also on a negative side. First, 12 major states experienced more than 4% growth in gross value added in agriculture in the recent decade. And to get a growth rate of 4% in agriculture is an achievement. It is not a industrial production, it is a biological production. So, if we have 4% growth in 12 major states out of 23 states, I would say that in more than half of the states, we have very high growth rate in agriculture. The second pattern is that in 7 major states, agriculture growth is higher than non-agriculture sector. That is also, I would say, another important pattern when we are talking of future of India, which sector should be the engine of growth. So, this matters that in 7 states for last 10 years, in some state for more than 20 years like in Madhya Pradesh, agriculture growth rate has been higher than what is the growth rate of non-agriculture. So, it has implication for what economists say structural changes in the economy. There the structural change is that share of agriculture in the state domestic product is rising rather than non-agriculture share rising there. Then in agriculture we have crop sector, livestock sector, fishery sector. Crop sector shows negative or less than 1% growth, which is a matter of concern in 5 states out of 21 major states, and these states are Bihar, Uttarakhand, and even in case of some green revolution states, you will just find that growth rate is not very impressive. Then as far as livestock is concerned, we find that performance of livestock in every state was much better than performance of crop sector in any of the states. I also looked at state level picture by bringing other factors which matter for productivity. 2-3 important conclusions which follow from that are states which were known as traditionally agriculture progressive states are neither having highest productivity nor they are having highest growth. Like you can look at this graph, that highest productivity of agriculture, rather I would say highest productivity of crop sector is not there in Punjab. There are 3 states, rather 3 states like West Bengal, Himachal Pradesh, Andhra Pradesh, which have higher productivity than per hectare productivity of crop sector in Punjab. This has very important lesson that how come this is true. We always view Punjab and Haryana as most productive state in agriculture. Reason is Punjab and Haryana top in terms of yield of wheat and rice, but they do not top in terms of what you produce from 1 hectare of land in 365 days. Other states like West Bengal, Andhra Pradesh, which have gone for diversification, which have put more area under fruit and vegetables, their productivity turned out to be much higher than Punjab and Haryana, even though productivity of major crops like wheat and rice is lower in these states compared to Punjab and Haryana. Again, the underlying reason is 1 hectare under horticulture give 3 to 5 times the value of output compared to non-horticulture crops. Therefore, diversification is a very, very important source of growth in agriculture, and recent experience shows that highest productivity and highest growth is happening in those states which are diversifying toward horticulture crops in case of crop sector. I would in particular like to talk about this state of Andhra Pradesh, which is now doing remarkably well. Similarly, state of Madhya Pradesh, state of Telangana, even state of Karnataka, that they are the best performing state in the country in agriculture and also in crop sector. And main reason is that they are diversifying area toward more and more area toward fruit and vegetable, which give you on an average 4 times productivity compared to the non-horticulture crop or field crop. So, this is the reason that in states like Punjab and Haryana, which have been the leading state for green revolution, vanguard of green revolution, you just find that they are facing some sort of stagnation. So, then one can take this argument further that how to break stagnation in those states. We need to pay attention toward high value crops, and we need to see whether we can break the yield plateau in the dominant crop which are grown in those states. So, in fact, experience of state is very important, and it is from state experience that we build on what we should be doing at all India level, what kind of policy framework we will be putting in case of agriculture. So, the drivers for accelerating growth rate of agriculture are: number one, widespread dissemination of improved technology, and that we are seeing that there is lot of scope in Madhya Pradesh, Odisha, Assam, Chhattisgarh, because yield of major crop in these states are still much lower than many other states. Second is irrigation expansion, and Gujarat, Karnataka, MP and Telangana, they have shown us that how they have harnessed their irrigation potential to realize very high growth rate in case of agriculture. The third driver which has been used as a growth for state is diversification. I have already talked about shifting area from non-horticulture crop to horticulture crops. The fourth factor is favorable prices, state support, terms of trade and subsidies. We will talk more about this factor. In fact, prices play two dominant role in influencing growth of agriculture sector in India. Whereas generally economists would say that it is the technology which should be playing the more dominant role, but in case of Indian agriculture in most of the period it is the prices which have played the predominant role. Then digitalization is also happening, market innovations are coming, startup, private sector, they are showing interest. And then we have lighthouse states. States where we have nearly more than 7% growth rate in agriculture. They can be the torchbearer for rest of the state in future, and these torchbearer states to my mind are MP, AP and this Telangana, and Karnataka is also joining the rank recently. From this state experience, if we look at the other achievement, that because of better achievement on production front, the performance in trade front was also better. So, I am presenting these graphs that in most of the period the export have remained 50% higher than what is the level of import. The recent data is that we are exporting 8.5% of our production, and we are importing that correspond to or that constitute 5.7%. So, exports are 50% higher than what is our level of imports, with proper policies in place, we will talk more about it. We can further raise our export. There is a lot of potential in India. 5.7% share of import in total production is also quite high, and more than half of it is because of import of vegetable oil, because of edible oil. That is the sector which need attention of the country, and there are possibility to for substitution of import, and there are possibility for export promotion, the net result of which will be that net foreign exchange earning from agriculture will increase at a much higher rate than in the past.
Dr. Chand, you've talked about the states and about India. Can you talk a little bit about how is Indian agriculture doing in comparison to the rest of the world?
Again, if we look at the long-term picture, there is very interesting story of relative performance of India vis-a-vis world. In fact, Green Revolution helped India to maintain its share in the global GDP agriculture, which means that with the adoption of Green Revolution technology until the beginning of 90s, our growth rate was in total agriculture was same as was the growth rate in bird agriculture. But then as we started economic reform, though people were writing all sort of things, economic reform proved very favorable for agriculture. Then WTO came. Initially there were some issues, but they were there not only for India, even for rest of the world. So whatever is the positive or adverse effect of WTO on agriculture, it was much less on India than on rest of the world. And you find that our share in global GDP in 1995, when WTO agreement was signed, was only 7.4%. And since then it has been steadily rising year after year, and at present this share is 13.5%. So almost doubling of share of agriculture in share of Indian agriculture in global GDP between 95 and latest period 2021. The second important aspect of our achievement is that we all know that we often compare our performance with China, and in all production sector China did much better than us. But in case of agriculture, according to World Bank data, our growth rate has exceeded the growth rate of agriculture in China in the last 10 years. Our growth rate has exceeded 4%, whereas in case of China, this growth rate is 3.9% per year. So I would say that things are looking up for agriculture, but I have been saying that India has potential to become a global power in agriculture, provided we make up our mind and we put in place the measures to achieve that. And that is quite evident from the experience from 1995 to 2022, that when we opened up our agriculture to rest of the world, when we opened up our agriculture to export, our share started increasing, and it has doubled between 95 and 2022. Why I am saying that there is a possibility to increase this share further from 13.5% to say in next 20 years to 20 years easily. Why I am saying so is because productivity of many crops in India is lower than what is the world average. So that speaks of the scope that exists for having higher growth rate in Indian agriculture compared to rest of the world. There are other development also which are happening, like if you look at this table, after in fact global financial crisis, the trend in global economy has completely changed. They have so many implications. You see in large number of country, growth rate of agriculture is higher than what is the growth rate in economy. you see it has very strong kind of implication, what kind of structure of world economy will emerge in future, and what implication it will have for agriculture, in particular for Indian agriculture. So I would say that compared to world agriculture, our performance has been much better, particularly in the post WTO period.
Thank you, Dr. Chand. And as you look ahead, what are some of the key policy related challenges that are going to face agriculture growth in India?
So far we have talked about achievement, but that achievement is not without challenges, and that achievement also involves cost. In some cases it involves heavy cost. I would just touch upon major challenges only. The one major challenge is that India's growth rate of agriculture has become very strongly linked to terms of trade for agriculture. Meaning is that if agriculture prices in real term increase, only then India's growth rate accelerates. If agriculture prices in real term decline, India's growth rate also decelerates. This is a challenge because this implies that if you want to raise growth in agriculture, you have to raise agriculture prices. That means you have to accept food inflations. So this is a challenge which has become particularly conspicuous after I would say mid 90s, that if terms of trade, which also mean real prices for agriculture, improves, growth rate go up. If they decline, the growth rate goes down. So in fact, the growth trajectory become a mirror image of what is the trend in the terms of trade. So this is a major challenge, and the only way to address this challenge is if technology can help us in reducing cost of production, which means if we are able to increase income of the farmer through means other than price increase, only then we can address this challenge of high growth mean high food inflation. So those are the kind of challenges which follow from technology and from the nature of growth in agriculture, that we have very good growth, but this growth has been costly. This growth has been inflationary. Then we have another challenge which I would say follows from development in other sector, that is that if we look at share of agriculture in national income, it has been declining. But if we look at share of agriculture in employment, it has been declining at a very slow rate. In fact, the literature says that the share of agriculture in economy and employment should converge over time, but they have been moving parallel. So this is another challenge, and it has serious implication in terms of income disparity. Wider the gap between share in income and employment, wider will be the disparity in per worker income in agriculture sector and non-agriculture sector. Because it is simple, its meaning is very simple, that 46% person get 16% income and 54% elsewhere get 84% income. So this brings income disparity, and we need to address it, and the only way to address this disparity is that either we make agriculture more remunerative in terms of income generation, in terms of better wages, some more work beyond agriculture, or we move workforce from agriculture to non-agriculture. So this is also called in some way a failure of development pattern in India, that manufacturing sector of India has not been absorbing or sucking labor out of agriculture. So this is, to my mind, second important challenge in agriculture. The third is that we have been putting more emphasis on subsidies than on public investment. If we look at how much we spend on public investment, which means creation of infrastructure, which means creation of capital asset, it is only 2.4% of gross value added in agriculture. Then if you compare this with what we have been spending on subsidies, it is 6.7. So we spend almost 3 times on subsidy compared to what we spend on investment, and it is the investment which broaden the base of growth rate. This is also a factor that since we are investing less in investment, therefore cost of production is not falling, therefore the supply response is achieved by raising prices. So it is a very intricate relationship between cost with the terms of trade, but the main message is very clear that we are spending much more on subsidies which are given to agriculture compared to what is the public investment in agriculture. In fact, this issue has not gone down well even with the farmers. You will never find farmers agitating for better investment in agriculture. You will often find them agitating for more input subsidy, not raising prices of fertilizer, not raising power tariff, etc. But today we have reached a stage where power subsidy given to agriculture is more than what is the total investment for the sector. So this is a third big I would say challenge in agriculture. As a result of differential growth in different segment of agriculture, the composition of agriculture sector has changed significantly. Again, I would say that that perception of the past which are not well founded do not change easily. You see, still we feel as if rice and wheat are the major produce of this country. In fact, the total value of milk in this country, produced in this country, is more than what is the total value of food grain produced in this country. That is one segment. Like from the focus on rice and wheat, it will look like as if India is predominantly a cereal producing country. But actually it is a fruit and vegetable producing country. Share of fruit and vegetable in total value of agriculture sector is 19.4%. Share of cereal is only 16.7%. So I think they are very important indicator when ultimately we want to talk about future, and we should talk about future taking cognizance of what is the present composition of agriculture, not what was composition of agriculture in 70-71. But sadly, many of our policies are still rooted in composition of agriculture that was there in 71, that is not there in year 2020-21. And major factor for change in composition of this is demand sides, but our preference of the consumer. But consumer want more, but consumer want less. So today 1/4 of agriculture is only milk sector, only dairy sector. Then comes fruit and vegetable, and they together constitute nearly 44% of Indian agriculture. The next biggest sector is cereal, then of course other come into picture. So this is how this composition of agriculture is changing, and challenge is that we are not dovetailing our policies and strategies to the changing composition of agriculture sector. We need to dovetail that to changing composition. That is another challenge. Then because of policies of MSP, because we are not letting market players roll, because of excessive emphasis on subsidies, the fiscal burden of agriculture is getting heavier. This is a matter of concern that how much we can allow agriculture to draw from fiscal resources. Like if we give price support, it costs 30 to 35%, that if you are giving 100 rupee in terms of minimum support price, you have to spend 30 rupee to give that 100 rupee. That is the kind of cost of delivery of the price support. So, all these factors point to that we need to do something to make market competitive, so that farmer get competitive price which remain above MSP, rather than government required to give that kind of support to the farmer. And also in case of subsidy, we need sort of prioritization. Yes, we need subsidy in insurance, because nowhere in the world insurance in agriculture is viable without government support. Then in case of seed also, you just find that there is some justification. But in some cases, especially in case of water and power, subsidy, the inimical effect of subsidies are much bigger than what are the favorable effect of subsidies. So, we need to consider this system of support for agriculture through subsidy and through this price support, because it has very serious implication for our fiscal health and also for sustainability. And over time, you just find that sometimes we say that subsidy should be replaced by direct income support to the farmer, but actually both have started growing. Like if you know Telangana, they are giving 5,000 rupee per acre per crop to a farmer, whether it is 2-acre farmer or it is a 20-acre farmer. So, if a farmer has a 20 acre of land, he will get 2 lakh rupees as a just subsidy, which is counted in the name of this investment support to the farmers. Okay, if you are doing that, then are you using economic measure at that place? This is another challenge, that direct income support is an alternative to subsidy, but what we are doing is that we are increasing subsidy and we are also offering this support. So, I think this is another challenge, that if we want to move toward direct support, then we should see to it that where we can rationalize subsidies. Then there are some other challenges, like if we look at the private corporate sector share in the total investment in agriculture, at present 85% of investment in agriculture come from farmer, around 14% comes from government. Share of corporate sector in investment in agriculture is very, very low. It is only 0.5%. So, we need to increase this. This is another serious challenge. The other challenge is that lot of complaints are coming about substandard and spurious input. We need to put in place proper mechanism to see to it that farmer get quality input, and there is some check on this sale of spurious input and spurious seed. We have a small and fragmented holding at many places. We need to promote custom hiring, because modern machinery is a lumpy unit. We can't expect a small marginal farmer to buy drone, whereas we are promoting drone in agriculture. So, promoting custom hiring is very important. Another thing is this legal issues in land lease in and lease out. In case of India, many people are moving from farming family to urban area, and there is nobody to do agriculture back home. So, what they are doing is that rather than leasing out their land to tenants, they are keeping the land fallow. You may not believe that in case of India, the area under fallow land is rising. The reason is that people from cultivator family who are moving out of agriculture, they are not leasing out their land because they feel if I lease out my land, I will not get it back from the tenants. So, we need to have new kind of tenancy laws where landowner without any fear lease out, and the tenant who at present doesn't get recognized or doesn't get any benefit of crop insurance, interest subventions, that those kind of things are addressed. Niti Aayog has suggested a model law to help the states that incidence of tenancy is rising in this country. People who are willing to lease out land, their number is rising. People who are willing to lease in land because land size holding is becoming very small, they want to expand it by taking some land on lease. Their number is also increasing, but there is no legal recognition for this. So, that also we need to address. Then there are other challenges related to sustainability, environment, as well as biodiversity and ecology, which we need to address as we go along. Thank you.
Thank you. So, we will come back with a second interview with Dr. Chand on the view forward and what are some of the priorities and opportunities for Indian agriculture, which we will do in a second interview. Thank you.